Thanks for joining us today at BIV Today, the daily podcast from the Newsroom of Business in Vancouver. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. The BC government has laid out a four-step plan to return the province to a near normal level of activity by September, providing we can continue to be vaccinated on schedule and there are no new twists and turns that health officials haven't anticipated. For businesses, the plan offers a path to recovery for their operations. And my guest today has been in one of the province's hardest hit areas in the pandemic. Anita Huberman is the CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. She's a regular contributor to our podcast and publication. She joins me now. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You're probably more upbeat today than you were a week ago. Tell me though a bit about how the pandemic has hit Surrey business over these months.
It has been challenging. It's the day after the announcement of the BC Restart Plan, and I'm breathing a sigh of relief because I remember at the end of March 2020 how dire and uncertain things looked for our business community, and no one knew what was before us. There was of course, no vaccines at that time. And we know, based upon our labor market intelligence reports, that 1 in 25 businesses in Surrey have shut down during the pandemic. Wow. But Surrey has fared quite well. I mean, many of our businesses were deemed essential. And British Columbia in general is faring better than any other province and territory during this pandemic too.
Yeah. Tell me, I mean, nobody really thought we would be 16 months along here, really. I mean, I think we were all expecting this was a 4-month, a 3-month, maybe a 6-month experience, that we were all going to have Christmas, for goodness sake. Of course, we'd have, has it worn people down, do you think?
It's worn people down. I think it's created a lot of anxiety. And especially, as we think as employers about returning back to work and getting your workforce back into the office, there's a lot of anxiety that our workforce is feeling. And certainly there's exhaustion. I think many people are just going to take off on holidays when they can. Yeah. And when international air travel or international travel is allowed, people are just going to take off because, frankly, we're mentally and physically exhausted.
Isn't it curious, though, that really at the time when perhaps the opportunities are there to capitalize and to get going strongly again, that people might frankly be more in need of a break than in really breaking out,
Yeah, and I think, people are missing, the livability, city building assets that we have, such as live music, arts and culture, all of those things that really help with your mental health, but also move the economy forward. So we're all looking forward to the future, but certainly the past has been quite exhausting, as you say.
Yeah, but what surprised you most during this time?
What surprised us really is never before have we seen the link between healthcare, business, and government, and the need for connecting, communication, all of those pieces needing to work together. And certainly I never thought as CEO of this organization in Surrey that we would be facing anything like this. It's my 15th year as CEO this year, and I just couldn't believe that we were facing this. But our business community, many were innovative, and some, just didn't get the government supports that they needed, so they weren't able to make it.
I've had, I think, the same answer to this question when I've asked others, but I'll ask you the same. Do you like your job more than you did at the beginning of the pandemic?
I do love my job more. I am exhausted as well and in need of a holiday. I mean, when you're in the Chamber of Commerce Board of Trade industry, you're basically working 14-hour days. And that certainly was for the first 4 months of the pandemic, working from home, 14-hour days because you needed to be there for the business community. You were their
Sure.
concierge of connections.
Mm. Yeah. So tell me a bit about what your thoughts are of this four-stage plan. Is it fast enough? Is it too fast? What do you think? Is it about the right speed?
Well, from our perspective, remember Surrey is at ground zero or was at
Yeah.
ground zero in terms of the COVID-19 transmission rate. So yes, we do need to start slow. It's not over yet until individuals are fully vaccinated. And I think some are thinking that, wow, I got my first vaccination. Well, I can do whatever I want now. And that's certainly not the case. And we're seeing that around the world as well. So we like the approach and the cautiousness of the plan. What we had hoped for, though, is consistent, timely communication of the business community so that they can prepare, so they're not playing guesswork. And we've called for that right from the beginning of the pandemic. People need to hire people. Supply chains are at risk.
Hmm.
And so all we're asking, and it's been a problem during the whole pandemic, this consistent, timely communication so that businesses can prepare. But overall, the approach of the BC government's economic restart plan, from our perspective, is positive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're part of that club that's been calling for more information and better communication, Anita. So, we can relate as journalists for sure. Tell me, I've had real trouble trying to understand why COVID was so rampant in the community. I mean, what's the best explanation you have for why it is that it has that Surrey and surrounding areas have struggled so much with COVID?
Well, I have to tell you, for the first time ever, I've been in daily contact with the CEO of Fraser Health, Dr. Victoria Lee, and she's been absolutely amazing. And we know that in Surrey there are frontline workers, essential workers, immigrant communities. We have the most number of newcomers within our city, within British Columbia, the most number of frontline workers, and they're traveling around the region as
Right.
essential workers. And that's the reason why. It's not because we're not following health and safety protocols. It is because we're on the front line. And I had hoped and I wished that the rest of British Columbia realizes that and realized that when we had called for all of Surrey to be prioritized for vaccination.
Yeah, yeah. That must have been a disappointment when the initial call didn't really get heeded because you had, I mean, look, there are other parts of the province like Prince Rupert where the province rushed in right away, inoculated, got people safe, basically killed off all the cases as quickly as possible. What happened, do you think, with the initial calls for Surrey? Why was it not answered in the same way?
Well, when we initially made the call, the reason that the provincial health officer didn't acquiesce is because of vaccine supply. So communities
Yeah.
like Whistler and Prince Rupert, smaller, our population is at around 620,000 now. And wow, we were being accused of taking away vaccine supply from other parts of BC. And so now it's not an issue. We have vaccine supply. And now, of course, we do have an all of Surrey vaccine approach, and anyone above the age of 12 can now get vaccinated. But it was a hard road for Surrey.
Yeah. So what do you think the first stage or two now is going to do in terms of changing the dynamic of business in the community? Will it really get things going fast again?
I believe yes.
Yeah.
First of all, in Surrey, many of our businesses were open during the pandemic. But now, and I heard this even yesterday from many of our members, they're excited. They are full of anxiety because they don't know where to get the workers from. They had
Yeah.
to let them go, but they're excited about the future, Kirk, and what the possibilities will bring. We don't want people to get out of control. We still need to adhere to health and safety protocols. We don't have full capacity mechanisms indoors in many of our facilities, businesses, retailers, etc. But there is a sense of significant economic optimism. But we're still waiting also for the border to
Right.
reopen. And we have the greatest number of manufacturers in British Columbia right here in Surrey. So that is also a top of mind issue for us.
Yeah. Let's talk on what you touched on there first off, which is the labor challenge in all of this. Yes, businesses had to let a lot of people go, and they would have been let go in such a way that they'd immediately go off and try to find something else in order to work in this period, particularly given that it's so protracted, right? It wasn't like a 6 week thing; it's more like a 16 month. So what's set up to help businesses deal with their labor needs in this really quick turnaround that seems to be required of people?
Well, what we've done is with the BC government, we have British Columbia's only rapid response business center to be that connection to the
Mm.
business community to find that labor in partnership and collaboration with service organizations. And so, whether it's reskilling, upskilling, whether it's finding labor, we're positioned in such a way to help with that. It's not going to be perfect, and there's going to be challenges and bumps ahead because, as you say, many had to find work elsewhere. But, we're there as one of the resources in the community that currently exists. But as I mentioned, we still have 1,200, 1,400 people a month moving into this city. And this is
Yeah.
where the human capital is for businesses. So the short term, bit challenging, the long term, optimistic.
Yeah. The other issue that you touch on though is that you've got such a manufacturing sector right in the community, and if it's probably positioned in in part because of its access to the border. What have we seen in terms of an improvement in the way that traffic has been able to get across the border in order to ship and export and frankly import at times with the United States?
Well, the border has remained open to goods movement. But people movement has been challenging, and those industries that rely on people movement across the border have been compromised. So many of our manufacturers, they've been okay within our city and within the South Fraser economic region. But those industries that rely on people movement, it still remains a challenge.
Yeah. You mentioned at the top about anxiety, and there's no question that every employer has uh, really started, I think, to think differently about the well-being, the mental well-being, mental health well-being of employees in all of this time. Do you have a do you have a sense yet of what it is going to take in order to reignite the the psyche, the consumer-oriented psyche, so that people will get out, shop, dine, be with each other? Are there some real keys, do you think, in the next while that need to be signals for people about the fact that it's time to come out again?
Well, I think number one is even before the pandemic, we saw that there was this prevalence of online shopping, and
Mhm.
many retailers were able to innovate and pivot, the two overused words, to ensure that, they're meeting their bottom line. And so I think that will continue. But I think there's been a sense during the pandemic that buying local, getting into the store, that sense of being social, getting, to meet people face to face is an important part of life, an important part of your work culture. And so it's going to take some time. I mean, I know many that are feeling anxiety about going back to normal. It's going to be a new normal. But I think everyone is ready to, get back out into their communities at least in the short term, in a health and safety precautionary way.
Yeah, last question on this one, because it's interesting that you do mention the online commerce that's taken place, and of course it's grown, and it grew in a lot of measure because of convenience and the fact that we needed access to things that we couldn't necessarily get at times. But do you also feel that there has come about a bit of a new appreciation of the local merchant, and maybe a different kind of commitment to the local merchants, that in terms of their importance in fostering a community itself?
For some, I would say yes. I mean, the prevalence of big box entities like Walmart and others, the convenience of going shopping there, remains an option for many. But I think there's more of an awareness, more of an appreciation of supporting local, supporting these smaller stores, whether it's retail, grocery stores, etc. I think, never before. We've always had these buy local campaigns, and no one really paid attention. But during the pandemic, they said, we need businesses to survive. We need jobs to survive. And so I would say yes, there's more of an appreciation, but I hope that trend and that appreciation continues beyond the pandemic.
Yeah, well, then maybe answer this as we conclude. I presume that somewhere back in, I don't know what, February 2020 or January 2020, you had some kind of plan with the Surrey Board of Trade to do something that wasn't at all related to the pandemic. It was like your priority for the. Tell me what that is. What have you had up your sleeve for about 16 or 18 months now that you can't wait to do with the board, now that maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, what we had planned, and we were planning this in January of 2020, I remember it well. And prior to that, in late 2019, is sending a delegation to Silicon Valley. That whole piece. That whole piece around the Cascadia Economic Corridor, because we're on the border, really adding businesses or co-location opportunities to Surrey's Health and Technology District. So we were almost ready to go. And having a digital trade mission is not the same. And so that's what I had up my sleeve to make Surrey that opportunity city that I always say that it is.
You're going to be able to do that in 2022, maybe?
I hope so. We're waiting for more details, of course, from the federal government. But certainly we want to continue on that thread.
Yeah. Feeling of relief, though, isn't it, this week?
Relief and just a sense that I can breathe again. And just remembering.
Not a mask on necessarily. Yeah, that's the other part. Yeah.
And remembering that what it was like last March 2020, or remembering what it was like this time last year, and looking to the future, because as I said to my husband, life is only once, and it's short enough already. Let's just get on with it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's see if we can, huh? So great talking to you, Anita. Good always to see you.
Thank you. Take care.
Anita Huberman is the CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief of Business in Vancouver. Thanks a lot for watching today.